live show Thursday. My aim is to assess why the keys were wrong.
All right, let's go ahead and cut to the crap. Let's talk about this. The man you've just seen is Alan Lichtman, a history professor who's developed a theorem called the 13 Keys. He's also known as the Nostradamus of presidential elections. He has quite an impressive record of being able to predict the winner of election cycles. His keys are meant to give an indication of an informed populace that will take into account various premises, and on the basis of those premises you can predict who will either stay in the White House or who will win the White House because the current administration is so screwed up. Now, Lichtman himself has admitted that his prediction this time was wrong. He said that Kamala Harris would win and that Donald Trump would lose. He has gone on to say that the keys themselves must be flawed because his interpretation of data going into the keys was absolutely correct. So therefore, there must be a problem with the theorem. I would like to offer an alternative theory. There's nothing actually wrong with his keys approach. What he's essentially doing is compartmentalizing individual items that people will take into consideration walking into the polling booth. Things like, is there a major scandal? How is the economy? Are people contented with certain things? All of these are perfectly valid things you can take into consideration. But in order to use them, you must put in the raw data correctly and into the right columns. And Lichtman, I would argue, has merely just put in the wrong data. It's not the first time we've seen professionals do this. He said there was no major scandal, ignoring the Afghanistan withdrawal, ignoring the immigration cycle that has led to immigrants going up to places like New York and Chicago. He's ignored do we have a good economy? If you look at certain indicators, you can make the argument that the economy has recovered, but it's not booming and inflation is taking a hit to individual people. He said, well, no, all the indicators indicate that the economy is just fine. Now, in his defense, it's not the first time that scientific-based models have screwed up. Look at the population bomb from the 1970s, where you had literally South American governments pushing out birth control pills to their populace because they honestly thought that our birth control, our birth rate was going to outstrip our agricultural capacity to feed people. The 1980s, where you got to see the theory that there's only so many dinosaurs, so they produced the crude oil, so guess what? We're not going to have oil in 10, 15 years, ignoring that technological advancement and discovery of new deposits was going to lead to increased output. And of course, the most famous example, global climate change, that has been largely discredited when Al Gore said in 20 years, dude, there's not going to be any snow on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, only to find that they were totally wrong on the basis of the input of the models that they were looking at. Anyway, back to Lichtman. The individual in question largely has put in the wrong inputs because he was taking the wrong raw data into consideration. He obviously was looking at professional media outlets to give him his data, to give raw census data of, oh, look, this economy is doing great, ignoring what people were feeling on the ground. And if he had looked at any YouTube or low-level videos, he would have been able to ascertain that the numbers that you're seeing are not indicative of what people are feeling. It's perfectly fine if you look at a number and say, oh, look, unemployment is down. Oh, look, the stock market is up. That's great if you got money to put into the game. But when you're pulling in 30 to 50,000 and you're struggling to buy groceries at the local supermarket and you're walking up to the cash register and you're looking at your wallet and you're like, dude, my money is vanishing like a Las Vegas strip club, things are going to be a little bit different when you walk into that polling booth. So are the keys truly flawed? No, I would argue they're a decent model and a decent approach for looking at presidential elections. After all, they've worked for a majority of the elections over the last 20 to 30 years. However, if you're not taking into consideration that the media might be manipulating things just a little bit, then you're going to get the wrong input. And I'll give you a perfect example. When MSNBC or CNN comes out and brings up the Charlottesville rally and says that Donald Trump said that there were fine people on both sides, and they edit it to just have that clip, and you throw it out there thinking that nobody's ever going to notice, oh, sure, it looks like Donald J. Trump is a white supremacist. However, most people actually went and watched the entire video and realized that about 40 to 50 seconds later, he specifically called out white supremacists, the KKK in general, and said he wasn't talking about those people. He was talking about leftists and rightists demonstrating in those demonstrations. At that point, you begin to have your faith in the media erode. And you're going to look to alternative sources such as YouTube, TikTok, and various other areas for people that are going to look at the news, analyze it, and say, is what they're actually putting out there the truth or not? A further analysis can be given when it comes to governmental statistics. All we heard during the Biden years was, oh, look, unemployment is going down. Those jobs are coming up. Look, we have a booming economy. And then when you actually look at the bell curve, realizing that COVID took a major hit to jobs and that those jobs coming back online are actually just the jobs that were lost during COVID for the most part, you begin to realize that you've lost faith even in the governmental data that's being given to you. Sadly, the egotist, the Colin Moriarty of the political set, Alan Lichtman, refuses to just take on the one simple, obvious truth that the problem was not with the schema, with the formula that you were using. The problem was with your interpretation, with the data you took in, and the sources you used to acquire that data. It was not an accurate reflection of what people were seeing, what people were feeling, and the concepts that people took to heart. We were not looking to MSNBC or CNN for our news. We were going to YouTube, TikTok, because our faith in the government and the media apparatus had so eroded, we needed to turn to our individual citizens who were analyzing this data, who were giving their own opinions of whether it bore weight or whether we were being manipulated for their opinions before they hit that ballot box. You have gone to arenas that are no longer effective, no longer accurate representations of the American people for your raw data. And when you run them through your formula, obviously, if you put flawed raw data in, you're going to get a flawed conclusion. And the result is a prediction that is as useful as a penis in a lesbian colony. The fact is that individuals no longer are looking to what was in the 1970s and the 1980s, arguably the early 1990s, as reliable venues to formulate their opinions. They have lost faith in the legacy media. They have lost faith in the governmental statistical bureaus. All they are interested in now is talking to individual citizens that are going to look at these various numbers and various opinions being thrown at them from the media and the government, and they want to talk with each other and say, is this really what you're feeling? Is this really what you're thinking? Is this really what's going on? Or is it just another manipulation and another circle jerk? Ignore the letters behind a person's name. Ignore all the credentials they want to throw out there as if it means anything more than indoctrination rather than education. Talk to each other and really formulate your opinion of really what's going on, what's right, what's just, and what is nothing more than a smoke screen being thrown out there to manipulate you in a certain direction. I'll talk to you next time when we talk about another thing I find interesting. I'm out.